Oh, Haneyville, yes, Haneyville folks are here. So Nancy and I are going to share a little bit about the theme. You want to come on up, Nancy? As you know, our theme is healthy communities and an epidemic of loneliness. We're going to really just talk a little bit about loneliness tonight, not much. You know, people are tired. And we're going to follow Romans 12, 1 and 2 as we go through this weekend and go through the plenaries. It will guide some of our conversations. And let me read that in case you can't read it. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, on the basis of God's mercy, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable act of worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So loneliness is all around us, and so it seems to grow. I want to tell you about two people who, when I was a child, really inspired me in the direction of Christian community. They were my grandfathers. And it would be nice if I could point to them as a positive inspiration, but that's not really the case. So Granddaddy Sid lived in the small town of McGregor in Texas, 20 miles west of where we lived when I was growing up. His little house seriously leaned to the left. His backyard was an adventure. It was very jungle-like. It was actually enticing to me as a little kid. I had an abandoned well that was sealed off with a couple of rocks. But most of the time when we would go there every couple of weeks, my time was spent inside where the reek of stale beer was just overwhelming. One of his two bedrooms was sealed off because either the roof leaked or there were holes in the floor. The bathroom was, well, it was just a scary experience. The living room had one old couch, and that's where I always sat, and I would have to shift one way and then the other, but I would sort of explore the broken spring that popped out of the couch from there, and with my bottom. Oh, you know, that was wrong. So it was all a little exotic for an 8-year-old kid on that age. But the image that is seared in my mind is that of Granddaddy Sid sitting in his broken down rocker, bowed over, maybe staring at the cracked linoleum floor. I'm not even sure his eyes were open. Occasionally he would raise his head and respond to some question that my dad asked him, but probably just a few words. And then his head would sink back towards the floor. 5 miles the other direction out of Waco is Oaklawn, or is Oaklawn, a little community that's actually part of a small railroad town called Belmead. And I'd say Granddaddy Pat was an angry man, but really sour is just a better word to describe his personality. There was an ever-present frown on his florid face. My mom would say that Gaston Patrick, that's what she called him when she got frustrated with him, had been dying for 30 years. And she was only half joking, because every fall he would say, I'm not going to make it through this winter. I just can't make it through another winter. He hated the weather. His prejudices were very deep, and no one was spared from his prejudices. His complaints were legion and universal. For him, it basically boiled down to life was bad. It was just very bad. So that was the experience of my grandfathers. I don't want to be disrespectful. I've come to realize as an adult they were both alcoholics. Both were very depressed. Both had started life as poverty-stricken rural central Texans who came from generations of desperately poor Scots Irish. And then as adults, they were responsible for their families through the Great Depression. At least one of them I know had grown up with a physically abusive father, and that would not surprise me about the other one. And to my young mind, they just looked, I became sort of fearful as a child. This was going to be my future too when I grew old. I remember actually thinking that would be my future. It would be very sad. I would be profoundly lonely and unhappy. I wish as an adult I could have a conversation with them. I've got to say they bequeathed me 2 very good parents, which I think is remarkable. But it was really from them that I developed a serious fear of being isolated and lonely as I grew up.
Loneliness can show up in many forms, and even in our communities. Healthy communities have paid attention to the ways that individuals within them can feel isolated and like they don't quite fit or belong. And there are also habits and choices that individuals have and make that can lead them into deeper loneliness. I have a brother that many years ago, when he was 14, became an addict. He is now 66. And though he was able to get a medical license and for a brief period of time was very successful in the world's eyes, his addiction got the better of him and he lost his license. He prided himself, until just recently, on being fiercely independent. His journey has been one of many stints of rehab centers, and though seeking recovery, has often fallen off the wagon. Along with this challenge, for a few years now, he has been facing increasing medical issues. And after COVID and a stroke and being financially destitute, we finally convinced him to move across country to live with us. He came with some fear and trepidation, and but without any other choice, quite frankly. There's been some pushback with living with Joe and me, and in many regards are also with our extended family. There's a sharing of cars. He can't just get up and go whenever he wants without checking on any of us. The grandkids, 4 of them now, that require quite a bit of attention around the table. Meals with family that don't always focus on him and his stories, and more. At the same time, though, my brother is slowly starting to see and appreciate the richness of life he has available to him if he chooses to engage. He is meeting others from Hope Fellowship and finding friends among them. One of our members has been able to connect him with a part-time job that has proven to be quite a blessing. Recently, he commented to our 2 other brothers how he's beginning to see goodness in this kind of life. One in which it's not all about himself, and which he can also give and collaborate. Slowly, he's finding community, and finding that it is indeed healing. Another dear friend, Christina, a single mother of 2 adult children now, has been my dear friend for 30 years. I'm fortunate also that she is my sister in Christ. 30 years ago, she was our neighbor, and through a Spanish-speaking Bible study, decided to become a Christ follower. Being a recent arrival from Mexico at the time, she was struggling to make her way in Waco while raising her 2 young children. You might say that she ended up adopting Hope Fellowship as her family. She has often said that her children are Hope Fellowships because of all the folks that became involved in caring for them in different ways. Though our community church has had the vision of being a bilingual church, at many times in our history, the balance of primarily Spanish speakers and English speakers has tilted towards the primarily English speakers. Christina has at times felt like perhaps she didn't quite fit into the culture of our community. Her sharing of her concerns has over time helped shape us into who we are today. She has found a family, and our vision of the church community has been enlarged because of her presence.
So as a child, I did begin to develop a different vision for my life, and it was basically this. I was going to grow old, I was going to be a bachelor, and then I was going to have my grandkids come and slide down the banister of my old house with me. It took me a few years, and then I realized, well, somebody else has to be involved in that vision too. And a few years more, I found out that was Nancy. And actually, it's sort of true. We live in a great big old house. It does have a banister. We don't slide down it. It's not made for that. But a lot of grandkids. When I was 16, another sort of vision began to replace that, came into focus. I started to take Jesus seriously. And I was drawn again and again to the picture that Luke drew in Acts 2 of the first church. Verse 46 was the one that stood out, that I kept coming back to again and again. Daily they broke bread together and ate in their homes with glad and generous hearts. They were together, they were glad and generous. That was the vision, I thought. This verse still warms my heart many years later. If properly understood, these two verses that we have from Paul up here, from Romans, properly understood, the transformation of our mind, the mind of Christ, into the mind of Christ, and the discernment that the will of God is good, it's generative, it brings life, it's acceptable, it's not onerous or scary, and it's perfect. It's complete, it's all that is needed. That vision, that promise, it's wonderful if you stop and think about it. To really know what the will of God is, and to know that it's good and acceptable and perfect. This really is a vision of community as you look at the verse. There's one additional truth in the passage that really is the one simple message to take away from tonight. The fullness of God's realm is not realized. Loneliness and isolation, hunger and war are not banished. The eschaton at the end of time is not come. None of this arrives just because we make some cornbread and mix up a pot of stew and invite the family of Christ to join us around the table. There's a prior step. We are to present our bodies as a living sacrifice. As Jesus put it, we are to lay down our lives for the brothers and sisters. This is where the journey begins. It's not easy. Christian communities are made of very real people. All these people, they're average, they're clumsy, they're a little dense at times. They're just like you and me. These are the people that we're called to love. And for each of us, this is where it begins. It's not just the present tense, not just the past tense. It's every day. It's not just the future tense. It's not just the past tense. Every day, it is the present tense. It's us presenting our bodies as a living sacrifice. It begins anew every day. It means laying down our demands, canceling our own plans, putting our dreams and careers up on the table of sacrifice, and then loving the people whom Christ has given us to love. I'm sure many of us here, we've probably read some of the same books. A favorite of probably a number of you is Dietrich Bonhoeffer's classic little book, Life Together. He made this point so well. This is a quote that's always stayed with me. Every human wish and dream that is injected into the Christian community is a hindrance to genuine community and must be banished if genuine community is to survive. The one who loves a dream of a community more than the Christian community itself becomes a destroyer of the community, even though his or her personal intentions may be ever so honest and earnest and sacrificial. By the mercy of God, we are here together this weekend, and may we over the next 3 days really hear the words of God and be transformed in the renewal of our mind. Nancy's going to tell us a little bit about what's coming.
you've all hopefully gotten your packet, and in it is a schedule. And I just want to highlight a few things. We don't know that we'll be able to gather here in 2 years again. We are very, very fortunate that this new administration at Captain is letting us come for half the price of what they are charging regularly. The contract was made with the previous administration. So we don't know. We don't know what will happen. We want to make the best of this weekend, right? We don't want to pass up the opportunities that many of your brothers and sisters here in this room have helped to plan for all of us. So just to highlight a few, there are campfires. For those of you that live in counties with burn bans, this is your opportunity to have a real fire outside. Don't miss it. There are breakfast round tables, times to just informally gather around a table that will have a little sign and the little breakout dining rooms, if you will, of Shaver Hall, with different topics that different ones of you over time have expressed an interest in just exploring with others. The leadership team, the steering committee, heard loud and clear the feedback from 2 years ago, and we have created a lot more open time, organic time to be together, because we know that the Spirit works well that way. And so, but it's also intentional, right? So the roundtables is a really good way to connect with others and hear from them. Caneyville, you don't want to miss that. The Amish hospitality. I was unable to go last time because of running around getting everything ready. I'm not missing it this time. And you don't want to miss it either. There's a couple of times that we're going to have a time for community sharing. That's an important time to come together and really just put out there both our joys and our concerns. What a wonderful way to really get to know each other, even if we can't have ongoing, regular connection, but to know that brothers and sisters are in different places, different countries even, and attempting to shine the light where they are. And they need our support and prayer. So don't miss community sharing. Worship time with musicians like we've heard this evening, and others that we will be hearing that will lift our hearts and spirits to the Lord. Plenaries that have our brothers and sisters who have taken the time to really ponder and pray and think thoughtfully about the topics of Romans 12, 1 and 2. Followed by cohorts, and if you don't know what that is, they're small groups that we've been assigned to, where twice, once tomorrow and once on Sunday, we will be able to gather with the same people and reflect and kind of debrief together what we've heard in the plenaries. And last but not least, on Sunday night, we will not have a lack of talent show this time. Instead, we will have a Mexican dance and music time, plus many other things in there, and you don't want to miss it. The Solis family, two of their older daughters will be presenting some Mexican dances, and I'm inviting those of us that are brave enough to learn some with them, okay? We will be playing loteria and having some special music from Oaxaca and seeing some things on the screen together. Anyway, it will be a really wonderful time to be together. So pray about it, think about it, what you want to be part of, but there is a lot here to fill your hearts and your minds, and hopefully energize us and renew us for going back to the places that God has placed us in, to be able to really shine the light in this great darkness we live in.
Toby and I have a few announcements. There's less now because Nancy actually covered some of those things with us. I mentioned the Loteria. It's It's not gambling, you'll have to come to really see what it is, okay? So I don't want you to worry about that. Breakfast tomorrow is at 7:30. The round tables will be in the 2 smaller dining rooms. Round tables are where there's a topic to discuss around the table. We've had a few people that have already said they'll host one of these. So tomorrow there is Am I Called to Live in Community? Toby will be leading that discussion. Contacto Hispano Hablante, a time for the Spanish speakers to really get to know each other better. Roberto will be facilitating that one. The intersection of household and community life. David M. Gold will be facilitating that one. And incarnational ministry and intentional community. Rosie will be leading that one tomorrow. She'll be sharing about her time with Servants of Asia, which has a very interesting model of how people are planted in neighborhoods and becoming neighbors with each other as community then starts to grow. So that's tomorrow. We'll have another set of 4 on the next morning. You don't have to go to one of these round tables. Said they'll be in the smaller dining rooms. There'll be a little plaque, piece of paper or flag that'll tell you what it is. If there's some topic you would like to do that with breakfast, let Nancy or me know, and we'll set that up for Sunday morning. We have several other options too, but we can add some more. So that the round tables will start at 8. So breakfast starts at 7:30. You have to be there right at 7:30, but if you want to go to one of those. And the round tables are posted around several places in the dining room and the hall out here, the entryway out here. Another introduction I want to make, a very important one, is James Kang. Mr. James. James is our OVC. Is that right? Is that what? On-site volunteer contact person. So almost everybody got a volunteer, or somebody said they were voluntold assignment. I mean, we have to put this on together. I mean, we're really all volunteers here. So people got assigned a lot of child care responsibilities, especially the parents. Child care was one that we really had to reach out and get the parents involved. Meal times, both prep or cleanup. The schedules you have in your registration packet. James, if you need to switch, if you can't do something, James is the one you go to, and he'll help you figure out how to get that done. If one of the teams needs more help, they're supposed to contact James, and he might contact you. He's got a few people that are known that really had as alternates. They didn't have it. It's just 2 or 3. It wasn't even their birthday, but they got that. But they may get called on. If you've got an alternate on your volunteer thing, see James. He'd like to make sure he has your phone number. That'd be good. Anything else you want to say, James? Yeah.